What we're going to talk about here is how best to use the guides and margins within Affinity Publisher to make your leaflet as neat as possible. So you'll see on this first screen here, we've got some blue lines appearing around the edge. These are indicating a margin. And then we've got some blue lines across the page and down the page, indicating guidelines, rows and columns on the page itself. Now, these can be really useful when plotting out the style of your leaflet. For example, here is a template focused leaflet, an A4 focused leaflet, and you'll see that what we've got here is a margin around the side of about 10 millimeters, and also some columns and rows that are helping us make all of our artwork fit neatly on the page, and also taking into account how the leaflet will fold and where the artwork will be in relation to the folds on the leaflet. So if this leaflet is to be folded into three, for example, you'll see we've divided the page into three rows and left a gap with our artwork so that none of our artwork flows over the spaces where the leaflet will fold. So when you're artworking your leaflet, obviously you can have all these guides and margins on to help you keep your artwork neat and tidy. You can also use the preview mode here at the top. If I just click on that, and you'll see that what happens here is it removes all of those margins and guides so that you can see your leaflet clearly as to how it will look when it prints out. You can get your guides and margins back just by clicking on preview mode again, and you'll see they return. So if I go to this blank leaflet here, let's say we want to set up our document so that it's an A4 leaflet with a 10 millimeter margin all the way around the outside and divided into three rows. So the way to do this is to go to the View tool at the top here, and then go to Guides Manager. And this will bring up the Guides Manager option. And I'm just going to move this to the side for a minute, because then you'll see what's happening as we make changes. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say that we want a margin that is 10 millimeters all the way around. And you'll see as I change it, it changes the margin on the page. The next thing we want to do is to put some columns and rows in. So if we say 3 columns, for example, and change the gutter to 10 millimeters, the gutter is the gap it's leaving here between the row guides. That's to sort of give you a decent gap between your artwork, so that if the artwork slips when it's being printed, or the fold is slightly off, as long as we don't do any of our artwork within these gutters, our artwork won't flow over the folds of the leaflet. And we'll also put some columns in as well to help us planning out our artwork. Okay, and you'll see that the guides all appear in blue. You can click on this color tab here and change the color of the guides to whatever color you might want. Okay, and you can also click on style here where it says outline and change the guides, rather than them being lines, to being filled shapes. Okay, as a different option. The other thing you can do with guides is you can manually put extra guidelines in, which I'm going to do here. So you'll see that we've got the page divided into 3 rows, but the page itself has been divided within the space of those margins. So it isn't taking into account the 10 millimeters at the top and the bottom. So when this leaflet folds, the folds won't actually be where the current rows are showing. So we can fix that by putting in some manual guidelines. First thing I'll do is just change the margins at the top and the bottom back down to 0. So you'll see that the rows have now moved slightly to take that into account. Then I'm going to turn on the snapping tool here with the magnet at the top. And if I go to this ruler along the top here, if I just click and drag down, you'll see an extra guideline has appeared. So if I'm going to move that guideline down to level with these rows that we've got. And you'll see, because I've got the snapping tool on, when my manual guide is directly over the row there, you'll see it turns red and it's snapping. That's to indicate that we're dead on where we want to be. Okay, so I'll let go, and then I'll just do it again for the other 3. Okay, and you'll see there's now an extra guide alongside all of those rows. Then going back to the guide manager menu, if I put the margins at the top back in again, and you'll see the manual guides we've drawn have stayed where they were, but those rows that we drew earlier have moved. I can then just remove those rows from earlier on, and you'll see what we now have is our page perfectly set up with a 10mm margin all the way around and divided into 3 rows that takes into account the full page, not just the space within the margin. And just going back to the guides manager, you'll see those manual horizontal guides we've drawn appear here in the list of manual guides. Okay, and then we can close that menu. And the final thing you might want to do with these guides is you'll see that when I hover over the manual guides with the cursor changes. And this is because it's given me the option to move those guides again. Now, I don't want to move them again as I'm artworking my leaflet, because I might move them by accident. So what you can do is go back to View at the top and then choose Lock Guides. And you'll see now as I hover over them, I can't click and move those guidelines. Okay, so you've now got your page set up with the margins and the guidelines that you want in order to properly lay out your leaflet as per this example.